On the remote world of Yaya Prime, the young predator Dek trains relentlessly to prove he deserves a place in the Yaya clan. His small size marks him as a runt, and his father has never considered him strong enough to survive their warrior tradition. Dek moves through harsh terrain using a variety of hunter tools, following readings on his scanner that lead him into a cavern. The scanner warns him that someone is nearby. Dek attacks the darkness with his sword, but his strike is blocked by his older brother Quay. The two immediately clash in a violent training duel that moves across the cave floor. Quay taunts Dek while forcing him to use the environment, testing his instincts more than his strength. After exchanging blow after blow, Quay pushes Dek onto a stone pillar and corners him. When Dek refuses to yield, Quay cuts through the pillar beneath them. Dek falls into the abyss, but manages to grip the cave wall and climb back up, determined not to lose. Later, aboard their ship, Quay tells Dek the time has come to choose his prey and prove his worth. Dek announces he will hunt the Callusk on the planet Jenna, a creature considered unkillable even by the strongest hunters. Their father Njar fears this beast, and Dek believes that killing it will finally earn him respect. Quay warns Dek that attempting such a hunt as a runt is suicide, but Dek refuses to change his mind. Their father returns unexpectedly. Dek bows and presents blood to honor him, but Njar coldly asks why Dek is still alive. He reveals that he ordered Quay to kill Dek because he is too weak to remain in the clan. Quay argues that Dek deserves a chance to prove himself, enraging their father. Njar throws a capture device at Dek and commands Quay to kill him immediately. Instead, Quay frees his brother and uses the ship's systems to launch Dek away from the battlefield. Njar opens fire, and Quay activates his shield to protect him. With the ship sealed, Quay faces Njar alone. The two fight brutally. Quay disarms his father, but Njar activates his cloak and ambushes him, stabbing him through the hand and severing his arm. Quay still tries to crawl toward Dek's discarded gear, but Njar calls him weak and kills him. Using the last of his strength, Quay activates the ship's launch sequence to send Dek toward Jenna. Dek wakes to alarms as the ship hurtles through debris orbiting Jenna. The hull is torn open, forcing him to eject in an escape pod that drops violently through the planet's poisonous sky. A massive bird nearly collides with him, and he activates a shield just in time before crashing into the jungle. He emerges wounded, frustrated, and determined. As he checks his remaining weapons, a vine-like creature wraps around him and steals one. More vines appear, surrounding him. Dek slashes through them with his sword, but they multiply faster than he can cut. He escapes by jumping onto one of the thicker vines and using it as a running path to reach a cliff. From the top, he finally sees the planet clearly. Jenna is a hostile nightmare of moving vegetation and predatory terrain. After treating his wounds with a bomb-like medicinal plant, Dek traverses the jungle until he encounters strange red pods that hiss and tremble. Above him, an android named Thea is trapped in a giant nest. She shifts into a universal translation mode and explains that she is a synthetic sent by a human corporation because humans cannot survive on Jenna. A massive Jenna vulture attacks, dropping rocks to activate the red pods, which explode with paralyzing needles. Dek is struck and collapses. Before the vulture can eat him, Thea uses one of his blades to kill it. She detoxifies him using a reagent from the same plant and explains that many Yaya hunters have attempted to kill the Callusk, but none survived. She offers to guide him to the beast's den in exchange for help retrieving her missing lower body. Dek initially refuses until she refers to herself as a tool, something that does not break his clan's rule of hunting alone. He accepts the partnership. Their journey forces them to cooperate across deadly landscapes filled with acid-spitting worms, carnivorous plants, and razor grass that can slice through flesh. A small creature begins following Dek, mimicking his movements. Thea names it Bud, though Dek sees it as a nuisance. At night, while they camp, Thea shares her past. Her team arrived 2 years ago. She and another synthetic named Tessa once explored the jungle together until the Callusk attacked, leaving Thea torn apart and Tessa severely damaged. Meanwhile, at the surviving human base, Tessa awakens from repairs. She relives the Callusk attack and is told that Thea has been captured by Yaya. She orders her crew of synthetics to hunt both Thea and the Callusk. Deck hunts a bone bison, a creature normally eaten by the Callusk. But Bud joins the hunt, disrupting Deck's approach. The chaotic pursuit leads to Deck battling a massive lunabug. Bud saves Deck by jamming its tough body into the bug's mouth, allowing Deck to kill it. Bud continues following them, bonding with Deck in its own strange way. Eventually, Deck and Thea reach her destroyed base. Amid crushed synthetic bodies, she finds her legs and reconnects them using the still-functioning repair machine. She activates a beacon to summon her crew, believing Deck's mission will interfere with theirs. Deck refuses to leave, claiming he will not run from a challenge. The Callusk arrives, and Deck attacks it head-on. He slices its belly, cuts off its tail, and even fires at its head. But the beast instantly regenerates each wound. It overpowers Deck until Thea fires a weapon to distract it. Deck uses a chain to pull the beast backward into machinery, shooting it repeatedly, but nothing stops its healing. As the monster pins him, it suddenly pauses, sniffing him. Before anything can happen, Tessa arrives, freezing both Deck and the Callusk with a grenade. Deck wakes, strapped to a table in the synthetic's transport. Thea is suspended in a repair pod, unable to move. Tessa taunts Deck, claiming the Yaya tradition of killing the weak is correct, and that Thea is defective. She begins experimenting on Deck, causing him agony. Thea tries to reason with her, insisting they are more than machines, but Tessa refuses and orders Thea boxed up. Deck and Thea trick a guard into opening one of Deck's devices, which explodes and kills him. Thea frees Deck, and they escape under heavy fire. Deck jumps into a waterfall to flee. Alone and wounded, Deck reaches his crashed ship. All weapons are gone. He considers leaving the planet, but remembers Quay's final teachings. A true hunter protects the pack. Deck decides to return for Thea. While gathering natural weapons, he encounters Bud again. By smelling Bud's spit, Deck realizes Bud is the Callusk's offspring. The Callusk spared him earlier because he carried the scent. Deck covers himself with the scent to mask his presence and prepares for war. Deck infiltrates the new base, wearing bison bones for armor. Bud assists as Deck uses razor grass blades, explosive fruit, and acid worms to silently eliminate synthetic guards. Deck fights through labs and corridors until Thea's legs locate her upper half. The legs attack guards on their own, and the two halves reunite in a fierce combined fight. Deck finds Thea fully reassembled, and she is surprised he returned. He says simply that he protects his pack. Deck tells her they must release the Callusk, so Bud can reunite with its mother. Tessa initiates the launch sequence to send the Callusk off-world. Deck detonates his collected worms, creating a massive explosion that wipes out an entire group of synthetics. Tessa appears in a large combat exosuit, wielding stolen Yaya laser weapons and a massive saw. She tears through structures trying to kill Deck. Inside the main ship, Thea fights through guards to unlock the Callusk cage. Deck climbs onto the moving suit, ripping out cables. The Callusk joins the battle despite its injuries. Tessa stabs it with the saw, lifting it into the air. A grenade is thrown, but Deck deflects it, freezing part of the suit. The Callusk uses the opening to tear the suit in half. Tessa is swallowed alive. The Callusk reunites briefly with Bud, who approaches timidly. Deck walks forward and lowers his head in respect. But suddenly, the Callusk explodes. Tessa had activated a grenade from inside. Burned and dying, she crawls out and tries to kill Thea. Deck stabs her from behind, ending it. Bud tears off her head. Deck returns to Yaya Prime, carrying Tessa's head as proof of his victory. Jar dismisses him again and orders guards to kill him. Deck kills them instead and faces his father alone. Jar cloaks himself, but Deck activates his ship's engines to raise a sandstorm that reveals his location. Deck cuts off Njar's arm, traps him in a cage device, and symbolically stabs his helmet. Njar offers Deck a place in the clan if he yields. Deck replies that he already has a clan. A massive predator emerges and devours Njar. Thea arrives beside Deck. A ship descends, and Deck says it is his mother.